This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
In 2016, women still hold a shockingly low 14% of top executive positions in the Fortune 500. Trying to get ahead while operating in a man's world, women continue to face immense challenges, constantly being told how to navigate these treacherous waters in a myriad of ways. Yet the gender gap persists. While working for a tech giant in Silicon Valley, Monique Svazlian Tallon was faced with a tough decision. Should she lead like her male counterparts or try a different approach? This choice gained her unique insights into how women can break through gender bias and become far more effective as leaders while helping close the gender gap. In Leading Gracefully, feminine leadership expert and executive coach Monique Tallon presents neuroscience research that tells us that women's brains are wired for empathy, intuition, and collaboration. The same qualities people are looking for in their leaders today. Through her extensive research, she has developed a visionary roadmap for women, the feminine leadership model that plays squarely to women's strengths. Whether you are a senior-level executive, a mid-career manager, or just starting out, Leading Gracefully is a must-read for women who want to get to the next level in their career and life. Through personal stories and those of female executives and entrepreneurs from the world of technology, science, retail, and nonprofits, you will learn how to successfully use feminine strengths combined with traditional traits to break through gender bias. Use it as a self-coaching how-to guide with 15 powerful exercises, tips, and resources you can apply right away to gain more confidence, authenticity, and effectiveness. Are you ready to be an inclusive leader, fostering innovation and collaboration on the teams and businesses you manage? Are you ready to be a game changer? In this episode, Valeria Tellis interviews Monique Svazlian Tallon, the author of Leading Gracefully, A Woman's Guide to Confident, Authentic, and Effective Leadership. Monique Tallon is a women's leadership and inclusion expert, executive coach, and the CEO of Highest Path, a boutique diversity and inclusion firm specializing in developing inclusive leaders and workplace cultures, as well as advancing female leaders and gender balance within organizations. Their clients include Fortune 500 companies such as Microsoft, Siemens, Deloitte, and Samsung, among others. She is also the author of Leading Gracefully, A Woman's Guide to Confident, Authentic, and Effective Leadership, which features a new model of leadership called the Feminine Leadership Model that plays to women's strengths and drives high-performance teams, innovation, and bottom-line business results. Before launching Highest Path, Monique worked in Silicon Valley as a marketing executive at eBay Inc., where she led large-scale trade shows and conferences. She has worked with organizations throughout the U.S. and Europe and has lived and worked internationally. Here is the interview with Monique Svazlian Tallon.
In your own words, who is Monique Tallon?
So first and foremost, I'm a divine, infinite being of light. And then I am this physical body. And in this physical manifestation in this lifetime, I've chosen to be, I guess you could call it teacher. But I do all sorts of different things within that realm. I coach, I lead workshops, I do retreats, I write, and all around the topics of feminine leadership and feminine empowerment.
That sounds great. Thank you. I have a few warm-up questions before we talk about your book, Leading Gracefully, A Woman's Guide to Confident, Authentic, and Effective Leadership. My first warm-up question is, what is life to you?
Life to me is an opportunity to learn and to evolve ourselves. I see life as a school, if you will, as a place to learn and grow and really learn from our experiences, actually. Our relationships really are teachers for us. So as we move through life, as we move through life's challenges, at least for me in this lifetime, my experience has really been one of growth, of constant inquiry, looking inwards, and really trying to do my best to improve myself, but not in like that sort of ambitious sort of way, although I have that side as well, but more on a soul level. You know, how can I constantly look to grow myself on a soul level? And so I really see life as that opportunity to do that for ourselves.
Yeah, yes. What do you think is the opposite of life?
Wow, the opposite of life. Well, we live in a sort of a world of duality and polarities, and so obviously the opposite of life is death. But I look at death from an eternal standpoint, and so I don't tend to think that when we die, we die. I do believe in the eternal cycle of life. I look at it very circular. But I do feel that a lot of times when we go asleep, especially while we're living, that is a form of death. When we're not aware of our actions, when we're not aware of how our actions impact others or the world around us, when we're not aware of our own infinite potential, that's also a form of going asleep. And so, I think it's really important to challenge ourselves and really look at, how we can wake up and really live life.
I love that. Yeah, not being aware of the infinite possibilities, right? So true. What do you think is the meaning, or what is the meaning of freedom to you?
So freedom is a really big value of mine, actually. I think I have fought for my own individual freedom in many different ways throughout my journey. But at this point, I would say for me, freedom is really about full expression, giving myself the permission to be who I am at my core. And that really requires, for me, an excavation of really kind of digging underneath all the layers, who I think I should be, or who people want me to be, or who I thought I should, emulate or be like, and really be okay with whatever I find underneath. And then give myself the permission to be that person, which requires a lot of vulnerability, actually. So yeah, freedom is an interesting one, but it's so important.
It is. Yeah. What a wonderful answer. Yeah. The freedom to be ourselves. Right. Right. How do you define success? What is success to you?
For me, success is about making a difference in the world, in any way that I can. And for my work, it's really been about speaking my truth and not being afraid of that. And so that's really, what I have to say about that.
How do you define true strength? What is to be strong?
So I've, that's been kind of the question that I've inquired about within myself and written about actually in my book. And I think, strength, there's a lot of strength in softness and in what I call the more feminine side of ourselves. And, those words, feminine and masculine, have a lot of energy behind them, but we are all made up of feminine and masculine qualities. A woman can have masculine qualities, a man can have feminine qualities, and equally as important. But learning, for me, it's been about learning how to step into my feminine side more and find strength there. Right. So finding strength in being vulnerable and being okay with who I am and the messiness and the, all the stuff that comes from that and really being okay with what shows up. And that hasn't been easy, especially when we live in a very success oriented world where we value our success based on what we achieve. Right. So we live in an achievement-oriented society that tells us that we're good enough only when we attain certain societal markers. And those societal markers, kind of end up driving us. And as women, especially, I feel like we're so conditioned now to be successful moms and successful businesswomen and successful, everything else, that it can be really difficult to tap into the softness, or the vulnerability, or the softer side of our feminine side of ourselves. But I have found a lot of strength in that in my life.
I like the way you said that about the balancing those energies, because they exist in all of us. And my next question is about love. Do you believe in unconditional self-love?
I believe in unconditional love.
Close enough.
It should start from self and then go to others. But yes, I believe that's why we are here is to actually experience that. And back to your initial question about life, I think life, gives us those opportunities to practice unconditional love. And so whether we take those opportunities or not is another story, but it has to start from self, I think, in order for that to really work.
Yeah. What is love to you?
Love is the most powerful energetic frequency and vibration that basically creates the world, creates the universe. It is the creator energy that we all actually have an ability to tap into. And so for those of us who know how to tap into that, it's the energy of creativity, the energy of connection, the energy of even vulnerability, right? So, the opposite of love sometimes feels like it's sadness and grief, but it's really just the other side of the coin. Grief and sadness is the absence of love, the feeling of the absence of love. And so I think, it is the most powerful energy that we all have the potential to tap into whenever we choose, whenever we're ready to open our hearts.
Yeah. And speaking of love, at this time, what do you think is the world's greatest need? And what is your vision for a new world?
I've been spending a lot of time thinking about that actually during the time of pause. And, I think the world right now is going through a time of reflection. And I see it as a gift actually for all of us to really reassess what's important. What do we value? What do we hold to be true and sacred? And what's really just an illusion, right? I mean, what do we really need to survive? Do we need that big house and a beautiful car and, all of our toys, gadgets and clothes and things? Or do we need each other? And I think we're all coming to that realization that we need each other in this time of distancing and, being forced to be away from one another. We're all looking at ways of how to connect, even virtually and just really missing that connection. So I think reprioritizing those things and really going back to what our soul really wants, which is connection the day, and also connection to the planet, right? To the nature, the realization that we are dependent on Mother Earth for our basic survival. And I think we take a lot of those things for granted. We just expect the air to give us oxygen, and we just expect the water to be there for us to drink, and we just expect the food to be ready for us to purchase and eat, right? Without really working for it, without really doing anything for it. But it turns out that it's not like that. Yeah, we have respect that which sustains us and gives us life, and I think that's a really important lesson for us to learn right now. And I hope more people are thinking about that, because without that, our species won't survive.
Yeah, realizing that connectivity, right? That everything's connected. 2 more questions. What, where, and who is God to you?
God is everywhere. God is in all of us. And God is a creative energy, a creative intelligence. And so I don't believe in one God, a God. You are God, I am God. This table is God. Everything we see around us is God. And we are just God experiencing itself in many different ways, in many different forms. So that's my definition. It, doesn't have to be everybody's, but that's how I tend to look at God, and how I choose to experience God. And when I remind myself of that, then life just becomes much simpler. And things become much more simple. And then it's easy to feel connection, and it's easy to tap into our innate intelligence and our innate wisdom and all those things. It's when we lose our connection to that knowledge where we kind of go astray and sort of get confused and then start looking for other things to fill in the gaps. But I think once we remember that we're all connected to this larger intelligence, this larger field of creative energy, then it's just much easier to tap into that.
Yeah, that's beautiful and so true. And I love what you said at the end about remembering, because we just forget about it, but we're always connected no matter what. That's reality, but we just forget about it sometimes. My last warm-up question. Do you think that life itself has a purpose? And what do you think is the purpose of your life?
Mm. Yes, I really feel that we all come in with some sort of mission. I think of it more as like a mission, which I guess is the same thing as a purpose. But and I think we're all trying to figure out what that mission is for each of us, and it's different for everyone, in my opinion. For me personally, my mission is to wake people up to their infinite potential. It's to help women particularly tap into their feminine energy and learn how to balance that with the masculine. It's to remind ourselves that when we are more open and receptive and soft and vulnerable, that it's much easier to receive all the abundance that life has to offer us.
So true.
So that seems to be the recurring theme that I'm on.
I'm glad. Yeah, that's wonderful. So let's talk about your work. What was the inspiration and the intention of writing your book, Leading Gracefully? And another question I have here is, what is the main message that you wish to deliver with this work?
So I had the inspiration of writing this book when I was a sort of young 20-something manager working in Silicon Valley at a company called eBay, where, I definitely was sort of, I was pushed into the water and had to learn how to swim very quickly. And nobody gave me a guidebook. There was no sort of like preparation for how to behave as a woman in a male-dominated field, such as tech. And it was really challenging for me. I had to quickly figure out how to navigate office politics and how to be professional and prove my value, but also then learn how to play within the boys club and all of these different challenges that there didn't seem to be a guidebook for. And so I sort of, learned the hard way just by doing it and making mistakes and failing and figuring it out step by step. And so at a certain point, I got really sort of interested in how am I supposed to behave as a woman in a man's world, essentially. Like, what's the right way and what's the most impactful way that I could do that, and be good at my job and make an impact. And so when I was tasked with leading quite a big project that I write about in my book, I had to choose what type of leader I wanted to be. And previously, some of the female leaders that I had as role models, had a very masculine type of leadership style to me, this more kind of command and control leadership approach that didn't seem to really fit with who I was at my core, which was much more of this collaborative, more inclusive style of leadership. And so at a certain point, I had to decide, which kind of leadership style I was going to adopt. And I, decided to take a kind of a risk and lead from a more authentic place. And it paid off, let's just say. The results were very positive. And that learning experience really, sort of kind of opened my eyes to the fact that we as women have choices on how we can show up in life or in business, really. And how do we do that? How do we navigate those challenges? And I really wanted to share some of those learnings with other women who seem to also be struggling with these same questions. And so that really inspired me to write the book.
Yeah. That's interesting that you talk about looking within and being more of that resonates with your core. And I'm just wondering if you call that intuition. Is that the inner voice?
Well, intuition is our internal compass, right? So it's that inner wisdom that we have, our inner knowing. So it's like our inner compass, which comes really handy when we need to make a decision of some kind, for instance. What I was referring to was really that authentic place, that authenticity, not being afraid to take off the mask, essentially. And especially in the corporate world, you're sort of expected to wear masks. It's sort of like part of the game that you play when you enter in the corporate world is you go in wearing a mask. And for women, usually they put on a more sort of masculine mask of either being really cold and emotional and kind of being very, not aggressive, but, harder is a way to describe that, just to be able to kind of play in that boys club. Or they sway to the other side of the extreme, which is to be the nice girl, just to kind of say yes to everything and work really hard and not really push back and not really be too vocal and just, put your head down and work and hope that somebody kind of notices you one day and gives you a promotion. But when I tried that approach, it didn't really work. And when I saw women trying the other approach of being kind of more masculine, I saw that didn't work either. So then it was sort of like, okay, what's the alternative here? And the alternative I found was actually somewhere in the middle of that polarity. And there is where actually I found a lot of my own authenticity, where I could be assertive but not too aggressive, where I could be soft and open and receptive, but also commanding when I needed to be. And so, that dance is something that a lot of times men don't really have to think about that because they're expected to behave a certain way, and it's okay when they do that. But when we do it as women, it's not.
Yeah. True. Yeah, they don't like that, right? Most men won't approve that. How long do you think it would take for all of us, in a way, understand this dynamic that we all have both sides and we can use them?
Well, I think for women, it's going to require them to be comfortable with their feminine side. And for men, it's going to require them to be also to be comfortable with their feminine side, which means we as women have to give them permission, right? Because a lot of times we say we want our men to be more emotionally available and more, emotionally intelligent and to cry when they feel like it or express themselves, when they feel like it and be more emotionally mature. But when they do that, we don't really like that. we go, no, you're supposed to be strong and, not show weakness. To create that safety for men, I think is really important too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's so true, Monique. Yeah, I agree. Do you connect authenticity to vulnerability? Because you mentioned Brené Brown, and that's what her work is about.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So vulnerability is the gateway to authenticity. So when we're able to be vulnerable with ourselves, we're able to connect with people on a very authentic, in an authentic way, right? So we sort of take off those masks, if you will, and we allow people to see our flaws or our imperfections or whatever it may be. But when we wear that mask, it's almost like we're trying to hide all of that. and it actually creates a lack of connection. So when we're able to take off those masks and be vulnerable, because we're more real with people, it allows people to build trust. It's like, yeah, I totally identify with that because I also have flaws and I also have imperfections and I've also been, in that place before. So it creates that instant connection, and that actually builds a lot of a trust in a relationship, which is a very important aspect, right? In any given relationship, if you don't have trust, you really don't have very much. And so, especially in a business setting or in your work, building those relationships with people is really important, and we can do that, but we have to be willing to be vulnerable at times.
Yes, I agree. Do you think that vulnerability starts with self-trust?
That's an interesting perspective. I would say, sure. I mean, it's something, it's actually about confidence, in my opinion, so I don't know if that's what you mean by self-trust, but when we're confident within ourselves and we let go of needing that approval from others, then it's like, I can just be who I am. Take it or leave it. I don't need your approval. I don't need permission from you. And that's true freedom. We're talking about freedom. It's when you just stop caring what other people think and are just able to be yourself and own who you are. And there's a lot of freedom that comes from that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's true. Yeah. And speaking of confidence, how do we know the difference between being confident and carrying self-importance or selfishness, arrogance, all those qualities?
So arrogance is when we fake confidence. And we see that on display every single day. So I think you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention his name, but we have a role model of what arrogance actually looks like on a daily basis. And you can see right through it. You can see that really deep down inside, that individual is just a scared person underneath, trying to show that he is this confident leader, right? That's just an example. And I'm not going to get political here, but it's very clear to anybody who looks at that, persona. So when we try to fake that confidence, people see through that really, really quickly. On the other hand, when we're just authentic and we are who we are, and it's not about having all the answers, right? It's about just being who you are and being okay with that. And people really resonate with it. I have found that there's nothing. You can't have too much confidence. There's a downside to that. But a lot of times women shy away from it because they're afraid that they will be seen as full of themselves or too arrogant. But I think they do a lot of disservice to themselves when they shy away from just owning who they are. Because at the end of the day, you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you don't have the confidence to assert yourself, be vocal, express yourself, then nobody will ever know. And that's a real shame. So I think it's really important to build confidence, and a lot of my work centers around that. Actually, I've built a whole online course about it that I've recently launched, and would love to invite people to check that out if that's an area that they want to develop.
Yes, absolutely. And at the end, I'll be asking you the final question about where can we find more information about you, and then please mention that. And before we talk about the feminine leadership model that you have created, the FLM, talk to me a bit more about the masculine versus the feminine leadership styles. You call the old and the new story.
Yes. So, traditionally, at least up to this point, we have seen leadership styles that are created by men for men. Reason for that being is that men were in charge. So Clearly, they came up with a leadership model that was based on things that you would typically kind of equate with the masculine. And so I describe the masculine style as being more command and control, more of this hierarchical, top-down style of leadership that is much more directive. And it's much more based on the me versus the we. And the feminine is really about the we. It's about the collective. It's a much more collaborative style. It's much more distributed, right? So in that model, we're very interested in what other people have to say, and we want to make sure that their voices are heard. And we have to show up with the qualities that allow that to happen: the vulnerability, the authenticity, the empathy, the compassion, all those more feminine qualities. So that's how I kind of describe those two styles of leadership. And I don't want people to think that, one is bad or the other one is better. Actually, we need both styles of leadership depending on what the situation requires of us. So again, this moment is a great example with COVID-19. We have an emergency. It's kind of a big one. And in these moments, we want a leader to be firm and say, okay, here's the plan. Here's what we're doing, right? So that is a much more masculine style of leadership. It is not a time where we can just kind of sit back and hope for the best. That creates a level of chaos and anxiety that, doesn't help the situation, for instance. And so different situations, different contexts require different leadership styles. And a good leader or an effective leader knows how to adapt depending on the situation and what it requires of them in that moment.
Wow. Yeah, you call it also transformational versus transactional leadership. Is that the what do you call them, the masculine versus feminine, or this is a different topic?
It's a way to describe the two different styles. Thank you for the reminder. And yes, so transactional again is it's much more based on what's in it for me. This sort of much more sterile kind of relationship versus this transformational style of leadership, which is, it's not just about me, but it's about, how do I help you become better, right? And how do we make the collective better? So whatever context that's in, whether it's an organization, our community, or the planet, now we're actually thinking beyond just ourselves. And I really do think that if we want to create a sustainable world, that we have to move towards a transformational style of leadership where, in everything that we do, not only are we taking in account what's in it for us, what's good for us, but what's good for, our planet, really. And really think through the long-term consequences of what we do today, because those actions that we make today, those choices that we make today will have a longer-term impact. But in the transactional model, we're not really thinking about that. We're just thinking about short-term gains, short-term profits, short-term goals, this quarter, next quarter, 1 year from now. We're not thinking, okay, when we do this, how is it going to affect the planet in 50 to 100 years or even 10 years, right? We don't think about those things, but the planet doesn't even come into the equation, actually.
Yeah, you're right.
But if we want to create, this more sustainable, equitable world and deal with some of the big challenges that are ahead of us, I think we do need to shift into more of this transformational kind of thinking and leading.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. Yes, and yes. So let's talk about the 7 feminine strengths and the 4 masculine traits that you talk in your book. And they are the feminine strengths. That would be great if you could go through them, Monique. vision, vulnerability, care, intuition, empathy, collaboration, and humility.
So just a brief background around how I came up with those 7. I didn't just make them up.
I like the number, though.
It's my lucky number, actually. So, but this was actually, there was a research study, quite a big one, that was done a few years ago by a man named John Gertzema and his partner. They ended up writing a book about it called the Athena Doctrine, which I highly recommend, which basically asked 66,000 people around the world to take qualities of leadership, to categorize them between masculine and feminine, and then to rate them in the order of preference. And what they found was a majority, about 2/3 of respondents, said that they preferred their leaders to have more feminine qualities in their leadership approach. And so that's where I actually started thinking about some of these feminine qualities. And when I juxtaposed it, is that the right word? No. When I overlaid it, with my own experience around the qualities that I found were to be the most important qualities in an effective leader through my personal experience, working in the corporate world and also coaching other leaders, I came up with these 7, which are vision, vulnerability, care, intuition, empathy, collaboration, and humility. And they're pretty self-explanatory, but I'll just touch on them briefly. Vision is about strategy, and it's about that longer term thinking, as I was just talking about, taking into account all stakeholders, whether it's the team, the organization, or the community. And it's about being able to communicate those ideas in an authentic way to influence those key decision makers. So you could have a great idea and not be able to really communicate that idea and not get to your end goal because you weren't able to get people on board with you. The way you communicate that vision is really important. So for instance, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, when they decided to lock down the country because of COVID-19, she, came to the nation with a full-on plan and in an empathic way said, listen, I know this is really, not ideal. This is going to be really challenging for some of you, for most of us, but we have to stick together. And here's how we're going to do it. So, she took a very nurturing tone, a very empathic tone, but then had that strong vision that she laid out. And that's a really important, I think fundamental quality to have if we want to get people to follow us towards a common goal. The next one around vulnerabilities is exactly what we were talking about. So really taking off that mask, being who you truly are, letting go of that tough exterior, being open to accepting assistance, letting go of having to prove your value, and really be able to delegate and get input from others, right? By just taking that step back and asking people what they think, which requires some vulnerability. A lot of times we feel like we have to walk into the room and have all the answers and have all the, all of that laid out so people will know that we are worthy of leadership. Well, it doesn't actually work that way. The best leaders don't have all the answers, and they ask for other people's input to come up with the best answer. And usually what I've found is that when we do that, the answer becomes even better than the ones we came up with by ourselves. So vulnerability is actually a huge strength in leadership. Care actually has 2 definitions. So it's about caring in the development of others through using a coach or mentoring approach. So really taking the time to invest in their development, making sure you're listening to the needs of others. But it also is about self-care. Especially as women, we tend to be, we tend to sacrifice ourselves a lot of times. We forget to prioritize our health and well-being. So learning how to create those healthy boundaries to avoid overwork and burnout is really key in whatever you're doing in life or career. So care has that double meaning. Intuition is about owning our power, standing in our confidence, leveraging our intuitive and perceptive mind, as well as our logical and analytical mind, right, to make those informed decisions, but really tapping in and trusting the messages that come true. And a lot of times, again, women tend to struggle with this. We hem and haw, we have a lot of self-doubt, we're not really sure, we don't know whether we should listen to our intuition, and there's this battle between our head and our heart and our gut and all those things. And I think when we tap into that intuition and build that confidence in ourselves, it becomes much easier to make those decisions. Empathy is about tapping into our ability to, put ourselves in other people's shoes and really understand where they're coming from, understand and communicate from a place of empathy, which is a radically different way of communicating with one another than we used to. So when we do this, we're able to have much more open dialogue with people. We're able to understand different perspectives, and we're able to really show people that we care through really, leveraging our empathic, emotional intelligence. Collaboration is pretty self-explanatory. So making sure that we're inspiring collaborative work with others, we're making sure people feel included and heard in the process and acknowledged for their efforts. This is really, really important. Making sure that people are given credit where credit is due, which is tied into the next one, which is humility. Yeah. A lot of times, either we're too humble or not humble enough.
True. That's
finding balance is really important. Letting go of needing to be right and really acknowledging other people's brilliance goes a long way in motivating people to do their best work. So those are the 7 feminine qualities.
Wow, I love them all. I have a question about intuition. You mentioned when you talked about intuition, you said that women, we tend to have self-doubt and not trust our intuition. So I'm wondering, what do you suggest we do?
Wow, that's a whole other section.
Right, another conversation. Right.
I'll just really quickly point people to either my book or my course, if it's okay, because there's so many exercises in there that I've built that I have used personally on myself. But the main one I'll just share really quickly with you is we all have these what I call inner bullies. It's this internal dialogue that we have that is always whispering in our ear like a really kind of broken record, telling us we're not good enough and we're not smart enough or we're not educated enough and we need more of this or more of that to be great. And really learning ways to beat that bully. And one of the best ways to do that is to come in relationship with your inner cheerleader, the part of ourselves that knows that we are enough, that knows that we are resourceful and creative and whole, and taps into that inner knowing to combat those sort of bullying voices, if you will. Now, it's much easier said than done, and it takes a lot of work. But when you do it, and I, can personally attest that it's possible to beat your inner bully, it's a whole other world. I mean, you can't even compare. When you're free of those pesky voices always holding you back, it can really free you to be more of who you are and to live life from a place of true authenticity and wholeness, which is a wonderful feeling. So such an important, basic foundational quality to work on.
Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense. So basically making that choice of choosing to listen to the positive voice, the inner voice, rather than the negative one. And it is a choice. That's so true, Monique. We have that choice. Would you like to add anything or read a passage from your book before I ask you my final questions?
Well, we didn't go through the 4 masculine qualities, so maybe I should go through those really quickly to just round out the FLM. So we did the 7 feminine qualities, and then the 4 masculine qualities are being assertive, being daring, being resilient, and decisive. Now, we just talked about learning how to trust our intuition. So when we do that, we can be more decisive. So it's sort of like you first tap into your intuition, and then you can make decisions from that place. So that is just a natural progression. And, as leaders, we do need to make decisions many times as leaders. So having that muscle, building that muscle is really important. Being daring to take risks. A lot of times we hold ourselves back from taking risks because we're afraid to fail, because we don't want to embarrass ourselves. We don't want to, look like we don't know how to do something. But as Steve Jobs said, fail fast, fail often. It's what leads to innovation. It's what leads to great ideas. And this really requires a vulnerability, letting go of the need to be perfect, right? And so when we do that, we can actually take the risks necessary to do great things. So that's another important one. Being assertive is self-explanatory, but here the key is how to be assertive without being too aggressive. And we can do that by learning how to center ourselves, ground ourselves, which is one of the most important qualities that I talk about in this model. And then being resilient, learning how to bounce back from failure quickly, not letting things, sort of take the wind out of our sails for too long. And I think, again, women struggle with this one a lot of times when we do fail or we do fall down. Sometimes we take it really personally and we kind of ruminate about it and beat ourselves up about it. It takes us a while to get back up, or sometimes we just don't get back up at all. So learning how to just quickly bounce back and have that resilience to deal with challenges, I think is also really key here. So those are sort of the 4 masculine qualities that can help balance us to be impactful leaders. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Yeah, thank you, Monique. And the FLM, would this work for men and women, both, or more for women than men?
That's a great question. I designed it for women in mind, but then as I worked with the model and looked at the model more closely, I realized that these are, qualities that all human beings have and can develop. And in fact, we need our leaders to show up with these qualities more and more in this fast-paced, volatile, complex world that we live in. We need leaders to have all of these qualities. So I actually invite men to embrace this model, to look at some of the areas where they may want to, lean into a little bit more, where they might see as their, growth edge. Because I think men can use this model to be effective leaders as well.
Wonderful to know. Would you like to add anything?
I don't think so. I think we've covered so much today.
Yes. Yeah. It has been a great conversation. I have learned a lot just by reading your book. There's a lot to learn. That's funny. When we think we know, we have to always check that again and again. There's so much to learn. Final questions. What was the hardest lesson to learn about yourself?
I would say this piece around leaning into my feminine side. And it's ironic because here I am teaching people about it, but they say the things that you end up teaching are the things that you need to learn the most. And I wouldn't say that I am, perfect at this, but it has been a lifelong journey of mine, and it continues to be of how to soften, how to be more open, how to be more receptive, how to learn how to be vulnerable, all those more feminine qualities sometimes can be challenging. So that's something that I feel like is a lifelong journey that I'll be on. And, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. That's also really beautiful to know. Yeah, that. And I think for all of us, that might be a practice for all of us, balancing these energies, all of these qualities. So my next question is about death. If you knew you would die soon, meaning losing the body, would you make any change in your life or do anything differently?
I think I made a conscious choice at a young age that I was going to follow my passion and follow my joy and follow what feels like truth to me. So if I end up dying tomorrow, I feel like I did what I came here to do. And I don't have any regrets about it either, and I feel like I overcame a lot of personal challenges to put this work out in the world. And I'm really glad that I did, because I think, if I, found out I was dying or died without having done it, I think I would feel like I didn't actually accomplish my mission in a lifetime. And so I don't know, I feel like a lot of us might think about that. What is it that you want to do before you die? What is the impact you want to make? What is the difference you want to make in the world? And really go pursue that with all of your energy, because at the end of the day, that's all what people will remember. You're not going to really take very much with you. You're going to take, you're going to leave behind your work, the impact that you made. And it can be small things as well. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but people will remember you by your actions, and what you did and how you behaved, meaning how you showed up in the world, versus, all the money you made or the titles you held or the houses, you had, those kinds of material things.
Yeah. Yes. 1,000 times again. Do you believe in life after death?
I do.
What kind of life, Monique?
Oh, well, I think we've all lived multiple lifetimes, many, many lifetimes. And I'm sure whatever is waiting on the other side is way better than what's here for us. But I think we are eternal beings, and I think we, that soul, our soul lives on way past our death. But I do think that we have the opportunity to come back and have other experiences in other lifetimes and learn the lessons that we're supposed to learn for our own soul's evolution.
Yeah. So coming back to life, what are 3 things about this life you know for sure?
I think we've touched on them. I think that I know for sure that we are infinitely more powerful than we even realize. I think we are creator gods, all of us. We have the ability to create our own reality in whatever way we can think of it. And I think we are eternal beings that have, these eternal souls that that continue on way past our physical bodies and physical manifestations. And so those three things I'm pretty certain about from my own experiences and things that I've learned and felt in my own body. So
yeah, I like that. It has been a great conversation. Thank you for your presence, wisdom, your authenticity, and your peaceful nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria.
Thank you, Monique. Where can we find more information about you, your work, books, products, services, and future projects?
Yeah. Well, I'll just invite everyone to go to my website, which is MoniqueTallon.com. I'm sure you'll have a link up somewhere. And there you'll find a link to my book, which you can get on Amazon, and also my new online course called Beat the Bully and Build Self-Confidence. It's an online course that you can download and take at your own pace. It includes all of the tools that I have used both personally and also with my clients to help people build the self-confidence necessary to really go for the things they want in life, whether it's a new job or a new career or a relationship or promotion, whatever it is that you want to have. Without this self-confidence, it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
Take a much longer time to get. And so it's such an important quality to have. And I found that in my work that a lot of the women that came to me in my private practice for coaching, a lot of them had the same issues around a lack of self-confidence, no matter how old they were, no matter how advanced they were in their careers. I see many women struggling with this, and so I decided to put that into an online course, which people can find on my website as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Monique, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks again, Valeria. This was lovely.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Monique Svazlian Tallon, please visit her website, MoniqueTallon.com and MoniqueTallon.com/product/beat-the-bully-course.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Bickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.